Tattoos have been around for centuries, with people from different cultures and backgrounds using them for various reasons. But when it comes to Christianity, the question of whether or not tattoos are acceptable can be a bit more complicated. Many Christians wonder if getting a tattoo is a sin. The truth about tattoos in Christianity is deeper than it might first appear. It involves understanding both the historical and spiritual context, as well as what the Bible actually says about body art. One of the most commonly quoted verses in discussions about tattoos comes from Leviticus chapter 19, verse 28. It says, "You shall not make any cuts on your body for the dead or tattoo yourselves. I am the Lord." This verse is often interpreted as a clear prohibition against tattoos for Christians. However, it's important to understand the context in which this was written. Leviticus was a part of the Old Testament, which contains laws meant for the Israelites at a specific time and place. These laws were meant to set the Israelites apart from the surrounding nations. Many of the commands in Leviticus were about holiness and purity, ensuring that the Israelites lived distinct lives. Some of these laws are no longer followed by modern Christians because they were part of the Old Covenant, which was fulfilled in Jesus Christ. So, while Leviticus does mention tattoos, it's crucial to note that these laws were given to a specific people at a specific time. In the New Testament, there is no direct mention of tattoos, so Christians often debate whether this Old Testament command still applies today. In the ancient world, tattoos were often linked to pagan practices, idol worship, and rituals associated with death. The Israelites were told not to adopt these customs as part of their identity. Tattoos were sometimes seen as marks of devotion to false gods or a way to honor the dead. God wanted his people to remain separate from these pagan practices, which is why he commanded them not to tattoo themselves. But in today's world, tattoos are not typically associated with idol worship or death rituals. People get tattoos for various reasons: to express their personal identity, to honor loved ones, or to commemorate important life events. In many cultures, tattoos are a form of art or self-expression, rather than a religious or spiritual act. The cultural context has changed, so it's important to consider how tattoos are viewed today compared to when the command was given. Another aspect that Christians should consider when thinking about tattoos is the heart behind them. The Bible teaches that God looks at the heart, as mentioned in 1 Samuel chapter 16, verse 7. This means that the motivation for getting a tattoo is just as important, if not more, than the tattoo itself. If a person gets a tattoo to honor God or express their faith, such as a Bible verse or a symbol of Christian significance, this can be seen as a way of glorifying God. However, if the tattoo is done out of rebellion, vanity, or to conform to worldly trends, it might not align with a Christian's calling to live a life that honors God. The Bible warns against being conformed to the world, as stated in Romans chapter 12, verse 2, and this includes how we choose to express ourselves. Ultimately, the motivation behind the tattoo matters. If someone's heart is focused on God, and their tattoo reflects that, it may be seen as a personal expression of faith. But if the tattoo is a result of unhealthy motives or desires, it could be a sign of a deeper issue that needs to be addressed. Another important biblical principle to consider is the idea that our bodies are temples of the Holy Spirit. In 1 Corinthians chapter 6, verses 19 to 20, Paul writes, "Do you not know that your bodies are temples of the Holy Spirit, who is in you, whom you have received from God? You are not your own. You were bought at a price. Therefore honor God with your bodies." Christians are called to honor God with their bodies. This means we should be mindful of how we treat our physical bodies, as they are vessels for the Holy Spirit. For some, this may mean avoiding tattoos or body modifications, while for others, it might not be a concern. The key is to approach the decision with a mindset that seeks to honor God. If someone feels convicted that getting a tattoo is not honoring to God, then it may be best for them to avoid it. But if someone believes that getting a tattoo is a personal choice and doesn't compromise their faith, then it's a matter of personal conviction. One of the core principles of the New Testament is Christian freedom. In Galatians chapter 5, verse 1, Paul writes, "It is for freedom that Christ has set us free." Christians are no longer bound by the Old Testament law, but are free to live according to the Spirit. This freedom allows believers to make choices based on their personal convictions, guided by the Holy Spirit. Tattoos, in and of themselves, are not inherently sinful. They are a personal choice, and Christians have the freedom to decide whether or not to get one. However, this freedom should not be abused. If getting a tattoo causes someone to stumble in their faith, or if it is done out of pride or selfish motives, it could be an issue. Christians are called to love others and consider how their actions might affect others, as stated in 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 24. Another factor to consider is the appearance of the tattoo. The Bible teaches that Christians should strive to live with integrity and purity. In 1 Timothy chapter 2, verses 9 to 10, Paul advises women, and by extension all Christians, to dress modestly and with decency. This principle can also apply to tattoos. While tattoos themselves are not sinful, the design and placement can reflect a Christian's values. Tattoos that promote sin, violence, or immoral behavior might not align with a believer's calling to live a righteous life. If a person's tattoo promotes positive values, such as love, hope, faith, or kindness, it can serve as a reminder of these virtues. On the other hand, tattoos that promote negative messages may not be wise choices for a Christian. Ultimately, whether or not to get a tattoo is a personal decision for each Christian. There is no clear-cut rule in the New Testament that forbids tattoos. What matters most is the motivation behind the tattoo, how it aligns with a believer's relationship with God, and whether it helps or hinders their ability to honor Him with their body. For some Christians, tattoos may be an acceptable form of self-expression or a way to honor God. For others, they may feel convicted that tattoos are not appropriate for their faith. Both perspectives are valid, and each believer should seek to make a decision that reflects their relationship with God. The truth about tattoos in Christianity is more complex than simply saying they are right or wrong. The Bible does not give a definitive answer, but it offers principles that can guide Christians in making decisions about tattoos. What matters most is the heart behind the tattoo, the motivation for getting it, and whether it helps or hinders one's ability to honor God with their body. Christians are called to live by faith and conviction, and this applies to all areas of life, including body art. Ultimately, the decision to get a tattoo should be made with prayer, reflection, and a desire to honor God.